joining us. How was your Sunday? Let me start by asking you
Good
that.
morning, Sonal. Sunday, it was nice Sunday. I think it's nice and cold and misty in Delhi where I am. So yeah, beautiful Sunday.
Okay. So, Jitin, there are so many aspects of this comment that have been broken down, spoken about, editorials written. But I want to keep the sexism aspect of it aside for a minute and come to the basic thing that people have been missing. The question actually that was asked to the chairman was that why is a company like yours still not into 5 days? Why do you still have working Saturdays? That was the question asked in a government, in sort of an internal forum. To which his response was, I wish I could make you work even on Sunday. The thing that I find very problematic about this statement is not the fact that he himself wants to work Sundays and is very driven by work and results and all of it, as anybody in his position should be perhaps, but the fact that he said I want to make you work on Sundays. Is that the part which has been most problematic?
Yeah, I believe so, Sonal. I think, when you're building a business, I fundamentally believe that businesses do require extraordinary inputs, but I think then it has to start from the top. And the basic construct here is that when you're building an organization, and as large an organization as L&T is, and even startups like us, right? I think leaders have to lead by example, and people will go where leaders will lead them to. Now, my view on this is that you can expect people to work X hours. Somebody says 70, somebody says 80, somebody says 90. I'm sure there is somebody out there who will be thinking 100, right? But I think it has to start from the top, and people have to understand that this is a sensitive subject, more so in times like these because people are always connected. Now, 10, 20 years back, probably, people just had a BlackBerry 15, 20 years back and nothing much, right? You could just check emails, but now people are connected all the time anyway. So I think it's very difficult to draw a line as to when is somebody working. I mean, unless you are on a shop floor in a factory. But all other tech-driven businesses, I think people do remain significantly connected anyway. So I think it's very important to define how do you want to define work. When you say I want to make you work 90 hours, you have to define work. So I think that probably could have been worded a little better.
Worded a little better, or do you think this opens up conversation for a larger debate which is actually related to labor laws? If you are expecting people to work longer hours, then maybe compensate them in the same manner?
Yeah. No, I think that's a very important point. I agree, Sonu, that risk and reward can be sometimes disproportionate, for leaders versus the average employee in the company. And I think if you want everybody to be benchmarked with the same yardstick, then I think it's important to define rewards, recognition programs for people accordingly. So I personally believe that if you want to work X hours, so be it. But then everybody then should be very clear with the expectations in that particular organization, and rewards have to be structured accordingly. Now, there may be people out there who will say, okay, fine, we will do it. But I think then rewards and the overall structure has to be very clear. But sometimes that is not that clear, and I think that also is a wrong nerve here.
Right, right. We're also, while we speak to you, Jitin, we are playing out the comments that Anand Mahindra made over the weekend as well, where he said he loved staring at his wife. That was a dig at the L&T chairman directly. But he also
Yeah.
went on to make a very important message. He said that your efficiency at work cannot be determined by the number of hours you put in. Why is it getting so hard for people to understand that?
No, I think I do absolutely agree with Mr. Mahindra here that I think efficiency today has to be defined by the impact that you can create. Now, one could create the same impact in 50% of the time. So, time should not be the yardstick unless you're running a factory where you're watching the clock. Because, those outputs sometimes can be a strict function of the input and man hours become important. But I think for most tech-driven businesses, and India is now becoming a service economy, and in fact, that's an area where people do use a lot of technology. Today, there is automation. Today, there is availability of AI. So I think it's imprudent to define and measure efficiency only by number of hours that people are putting in. I think that's a little antiquated way of possibly measuring the impact. And impact, I think, is the defining force here for most organizations, right? And I think then businesses can take a calibrated approach as to what is required for them to make the necessary impact that they envision to, and make sure that all people are aligned with that particular vision. So I personally absolutely agree that impact should be the guiding light and not possibly the number of hours.
Impact you're making, goals that you're actually achieving, that should be the guiding force of good, bad, ugly, workspaces, not the number of hours that you're saying. But if I were to play the devil's advocate here, Jitin, the argument on the other side has often been that, listen, look, not all companies can be the same. Companies also have phases, like all of us have life phases. They have phases in which they need to put in the extra hour. They need to burn the midnight oil. For example, startups as a culture said to be one of hustling, because that's just the nature of the demon, if you can call it that. That's just how they are structured. But can L&T afford to use that argument?
No, let me take the example of a startup because I run one. So I think when you start a company, Sonal, when you are a founder, I think it does take disproportionate effort from your side, and there are no two ways about it. But having said that, I think people who want to change the world, people who want to build things that people love and start using, they are mentally prepared to go that extra mile. They train, and I compare this with an athlete's life. So if you want to be an elite athlete, it doesn't happen overnight. You prepare for it, you're equipped for it, you're driven, you train, you have that mindset, you have that grit, you have that determination. So when you talk about people who are building companies, they need to necessarily demonstrate these attributes, and they are mentally prepared to possibly make sacrifices that an average person may not want to. And I think it's difficult to judge because in today's day and age, people have their own goals, people have their own expectations from their own life, and I think they attune everything in their lives accordingly. So I think my fundamental take on this is that if I want to do something and if I want to build a business which requires X amount of input from me on a daily basis, and if I'm okay with it, then so be it. But I think one has to make that judicious balance for the overall organization, because not everybody in the organization may want to do this. So, just like if you're playing sport, and sometimes in a sport, some people train more, they are expected to perform at a better rate, but not everybody in that team can be as good as them. So I think that differentiation has to be made with a lot of, let's say, sensitive judgment. And it is for leaders to make sure that they are able to maximize what people are able to contribute in the organization rather than straitjacket everybody. Having said that, I will also say that a little bit of, let's say, clarity, both from both sides, goes a long way in ironing out such issues. And I think that expectation management is the root cause of friction. And I think if people can make sure that expectations are clearly defined, then it can go a long way in solving this.
And it has to start with communication, right? It has to be, like we've done in several previous episodes of TBC as well, we've spoken about how communication is key. If you're going in through a period where a lot of work is required, more work is required to be pulled off, please communicate that to your employees and let them know that this is going to be, say, the condition for the next quarter, and after that we expect things to get better, etc. But we keep putting it back to, say, a Narayan Murthy or Mr. Subramaniam. The point is, the 90-hour or 70-hour work week is not a concept which is new. In fact, the conversation online is that a lot of the boomer generation is actually fixated on it. Do you see this as a generational gap at all? Do you see younger leaders perhaps not buy in on this concept?
No, certainly, I think there could be an element of people who build businesses during different eras. And I think it's not only about the age, it's about the availability of resources. So if you dial back 30 years, the amount of technology that was available, communication tools that were available, the penetration of internet, it was almost zilch, right, as compared to what it is today. So I think people who build businesses, and these are terrific businesses, these are big businesses that we are talking about, and extremely respectable names that we are talking about here, Sonal. So I think when they make statements, they possibly make those statements with an understanding of how they built businesses back in the day. But having said that, as humans evolve and so do businesses, so I think today people are trying to find the right balance in terms of how can they work with the newer crop of people. And I think there's a lot of talk about how Gen Z, employees are being, let's say, coached and dealt with, and all the necessary attributes that businesses need from their workforce, I think it's inevitable because almost 50% of the workforce is now converging towards Gen Z, right?
Yes.
So I think they have a different mindset. And that's not wrong. I think every generation is expected and entitled to have a mindset and expectation set. So I think it is for businesses to evolve, businesses to be flexible and understand how to get the best out of people. And certainly, I think there could be an argument that, as you rightly use this term, boomer entrepreneurs, right? They may have a different take, but I think life is about evolution. So yeah, we have to find the way forward.
Yeah, but if I can quickly sort of squeeze in another question then, Jitin, it is also about getting the right health reward balance against the kind of work that you're doing in.
Absolutely.
Is that something that you seem as the path forward? As
No,
not going
absolutely.
into the extremes, not saying 90-hour work week or 9 hours a day, not between the two of them. Do you see a middle path as something which will talk about well-being on the whole of the
Absolutely.
organization
So
and the employee?
no. So I think for any organization to succeed, there is a balance that one needs to create between employee happiness, customer happiness, and shareholder happiness. I think this is the holy trinity which has to be balanced, and it is the job of the people at the helm of affairs to ensure that this balance is maintained and it's sustainable, right? So as you mentioned, right, there could be phases where you may want to slog. There could be phases where you clearly define that, hey, we have to slog, we have a new product launch, we have a certain ambition, and that's fine. But maintaining overall balance, and especially health balance and mental health balance and physical health balance, I think has become extremely critical for organizations. And in my personal view, and since I run a business in the healthcare space, I think in my personal view, historically organizations have possibly restricted themselves to a hospitalization kind of coverage at the workplace, and they thought that is enough, right? But the fact of the matter is that an average young employee, which now constitutes 50-60% of the workforce, does not get hospitalized. Maybe only 5% people may face such acute events. But what happens is, on a daily basis, when you come to work, you are faced with long commutes, you are faced with mental stress, you're always connected, you
Yeah.
have physical disorders, you could have image-oriented problems which may impact the way you think and the way you perform. And on top of that, you have this expectation that you have to work X hours. So I think the organizations and forward-looking organizations must invest in holistic employee wellness. So it's not only work-life balance today. I think it is work, life, health, and reward balance. I think that's extremely important. So one has to create an equitable ecosystem where you can clearly build, programs which are truly
True. Yeah.
impactful.
Yeah, yeah. All right, Jitin, we'll leave it there for the moment. There's so much more to be discussed on this story, actually, but we'll come back and we'll visit this more in the coming week as well. For now, thank you so much for joining us. And with that, we're going to slip into a quick break. On the other side, we've got another infrastructure major breakthrough landmark moment coming in from the Himalayan ranges. The Z mode, as it's set to transform, that tunnel is set to transform the Himalayan region between Ladakh and the valley. We'll bring you more on the other side.